After everything I've been through, I certainly deserved a happy ending. Sadly, I don't believe those exist anymore. I thought getting kidnapped was the worst experience of my life. Turns out, he wasn't done with me when the ransom was handed in. Before I get into any of that though, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. If you don't, a monster will visit you in your sleep. That's actually how all of this started, with a stupid urban legend. One day, my best friends and I were reading stories online about local ghost stories. We came across this one about visiting this bridge late at night. Legend has it, if you go there at midnight, you'll see the ghost of a boy. We were about 13 at the time, and that stuff sounded so cool to us. Without our parents' permission, we decided to go out and try it. The three of us stayed up all night, and to our surprise, someone did jump out and grab me. At first, I really thought it was the ghost of the murdered boy, but this was no ghost. Some boy, who couldn't be much older than us, dragged me away. My friends were screaming. He threw an envelope at them and told them to give that to my father. The money better be in the designated location by 5 a.m. If not, well, you won't be very happy. Do not call the police or else. I was so scared. My father was very famous and wealthy, but I never thought I'd get caught in the middle of such a scandal. My dad paid the ransom and then he just disappeared. We never got a good look at his face because he had a surgical mask on. He put me in a car and blindfolded me. Next, we drove for the next few hours. The kidnapper kept apologizing. It was so weird. Was this guy stable? So many questions flew through my mind. How scary would it be if my dad didn't answer my friend's knock at the door? What would he do if the cops were called? Lucky for me, those were questions I never had to answer. At one point, my kidnapper stopped the car and told me to brace myself. I didn't know what that meant exactly, but before I had time to think, he pushed me. Next, I fell onto grass. It wasn't soft, but I didn't really get hurt. I heard the car driving off, and I took off my blindfold to see I was in the middle of a parking lot. A few minutes later, my father drove up in his car. The kidnapper had texted him the details of where to find me once he escaped. He called the police to try and catch the kidnapper, but he was nowhere to be seen. Everything was dark when he kidnapped me, and he was wearing a surgical mask, so I never got a good look at his face. Plus, I was blindfolded most of the time. The only thing I could remember was his deep voice. I was so scared. I didn't leave the house for weeks. I went to therapy for a long time and even had to redo the whole school year. I could not stand the dark anymore. I never left the house at night at all. I constantly thought I saw him around all the time. At first, I thought I had my trauma under control, but it became apparent it was consuming me. One time, my friends tried to convince me to come out dancing with them. While we were on the dance floor, this guy started to dance next to me. He wasn't doing anything weird at all. He was actually super polite. I felt bad, but I was just so uncomfortable. He tried to whisper something in my ear, and he got so close to me. I don't know what came over me, but I just saw my kidnapper in the surgical mask. I punched him right in the face, and everyone stared at me. The guy was my friend's cousin, so she was super angry at me for giving him a black eye. After that, she stopped inviting me out anywhere. She ignored all my calls and apologies. Finally, I got a call from another friend who felt bad leaving me out in the cold. I was so relieved when I saw the call from her, but it only made me feel even worse. She told me that I was out of the friend group until I could act normal. I asked what that was supposed to mean. She told me I was being crazy. They had all been gossiping about me and said I spent too many years grieving kidnapping. It was just a few hours in a stranger's car, Mandy, she said. It's not like you died or anything. Having someone call out your insecurities like that? She was right in a way. I felt so guilty for acting the way that I did. I found it very difficult to be around guys since the incident. See, I went to an all-girls private school and had virtually no contact with any guys at all, except my father. In fact, I barely saw anyone at all except for my friends. Without them, I was afraid I'd fall into an even darker space. I begged them to hang out with me again, but she said they weren't so sure. We were adults, and at 19, and almost all of my friends had boyfriends. If I couldn't hang out with guys without having a freak out, they wanted nothing to do with me. You can come back in our group on one condition, she told me. Prove to us that you can be around a guy. Her solution was that I needed to find a boyfriend. This would be better for everyone as I would stop fifth wheeling and ensure I could stay behaved. I agreed because I was desperate. But how was I even supposed to do that? Even if I didn't actively avoid boys, there were none at school or anything. My closest chance of meeting a guy would be approaching someone in the supermarket. Now, my standards are pretty low, being my selection is limited to a grocery store. But one day, when I was out shopping, I saw this super hot guy. Like, I am talking model-worthy. He was tall and built. He looked like a boy band member. I kind of stalked him for a while, following him aisle to aisle and peeking at him from behind shelves. Part of me wanted to run up to him and steal a kiss. The other was a little petrified. I awkwardly watched him from afar, weighing my options out. I looked around the store and saw the other eligible bachelors. I decided there was no way I was letting such a hottie go. I was going to ask him out myself. I approached him and let him know that I was quite interested in getting to know him a little better. He looked at me and quickly looked away, very flustered. He ran out of the store. I thought it was kind of attractive. Maybe he was just as nervous as I was to talk to a girl. I chased after him and yelled at him to wait. I followed him up to the car, explaining that I didn't mean to scare him off. I'm sorry, I need to go. You! I exclaimed in a panic. That voice! The way he apologized, I was immediately flashed back to the kidnapping that had ruined my social life. It was him! I can never forget that voice. He left everything in his car and pushed it away from him and moved towards me. I now know where my internal fears were coming from. As the attractive boy came at me, I met his eyes. Without the surgical mask, it was difficult to recognize him. But now that I heard his voice apologize, I knew this was him. I quickly turned to run away, but he grabbed my arm. Before I got the chance to scream or anything, he pushed me into his car. Next, he leaned in and told me I had to be quiet or else, and hand over my phone. I did what he said. He popped my phone in his pocket and got in the driver's seat. Next, we were driving somewhere. I was so scared of what he could do to me, so I just sat very still in the passenger seat and looked forward. We didn't say a word until he stopped at this shack in the middle of nowhere. My mind was racing. I was again just a 13-year-old waiting for her dad to pay the ransom. I was shaking. It was like my deepest nightmare. When we went inside, it didn't look like the torture chamber I was imagining. There were no knives hanging from the ceiling or a woman tied in a corner. Instead, it looked like he lived here. He instructed me to sit on the sofa, and I followed his orders. I heard a loud pop and quickly closed my eyes and covered my head. "Don't hurt me!" I yelled. "What?" he asked, looking confused. "Look, I'm not going to hurt you. I just can't have you going to the cops." I asked what he planned on doing to me then. Holding me hostage? Killing me? He looked even more shocked and put his hands up. He told me to calm down and he would just explain everything. He told me this was his home and he had something to show me before I called the cops on him. He showed me another room where this woman was lying in bed, hooked up to a bunch of beeping machines. He explained that the money he got for our ransom was all for his mother's very expensive cancer treatment. He never intended to hurt me, but he found no other way of getting the money. His shifts were long and hard, but he barely made enough to cover his rent. In fact, he already spent all the ransom money on her first treatment, and he needed more money for additional surgeries. Jeff talked about his mom, and I don't know why, but he just got even more attractive to me. He was so kind and funny, and he had a real reason to have kidnapped me all those years ago. He too was haunted by the mistakes that he had made in desperation. He had actually been wanting to talk to me and formally apologize for anything that happened. But he always chickened out. I was completely lost in thought when we heard violent banging at the door. "Open up, it's the police!" He immediately turned at me and panicked. "If they take me away, if I'm not here to take care of my mom?" he started to say. Just then, the door busted in, and there were 4 police officers and my father. "Daddy, what are you doing? You're embarrassing me!" He told me that one of his friends was at the store and saw my suspicious exchange with Jeff. They immediately called him thinking I was in trouble. And when I didn't answer his many calls, he used the tracking device in my phone to find me. I immediately jumped to Jeff's defense and said that I was perfectly fine. We were just talking. My dad was very skeptical. He said he'd never seen the boy in his life and doubted he was one of my friends judging by his house. He asked me why I got into his car all alone. "Because he's my boyfriend!" I yelled out before I could think of anything else. I made up a fake story on how we had just finished an internship and we met once at the store. I said I had to keep it a secret because Dad was smothering me. "I'm 19! You can't tell me what to do anymore!" This was partly an act, but there was some truth to it. It took reconnecting with my kidnapper to get me to confront my father. My father got very embarrassed. and the police looked very annoyed. "Oh, well, we'll talk about this later, Mandy," my father awkwardly said as he slipped through the door. When we were finally alone, I frantically apologized to Jeff. I had no idea what had gotten into me. It was just the first thing that came to my mind. "Us being in a relationship was the first thing that came to your mind?" He laughed. "Well, I owe you one. Seriously, anything." I told him he could start by driving me home and giving me my cell phone. I now saw I had a lot of missed messages, most of which were from my father. I read through them on the drive back to my house. I started getting a sinking feeling in my stomach, partly because I didn't feel safe driving with Jeff, also because it seemed my little white lie spread pretty fast. My father had been very worried, so called all of my friends asking where I was. When it all ended, he called them all back to ask about my boyfriend. I got countless messages from my old friends asking me to meet that weekend to talk all about Jeff. Most important of all, I got a very nice message from my father, saying how proud he was of me working past my problems and apologizing for intruding tonight. He said he was worried I was never going to have a normal life because of what happened. As I got out of the car and we were ready to bid our farewells, an idea popped in my head. "See you, Mandy. Thanks again, really." Jeff laughed. "Wow, 3 hours is the shortest relationship in my life." "Actually, Jeff, there is something you can help me with." I asked him what he thought about prolonging our arrangement a little bit longer. I think I had a solution to both of our problems. I explained to him the problem with my friends and me, needing a boyfriend to hang out with them. I told him that if he acted like my boyfriend, I would pay him some money to keep up the cancer treatment and I wouldn't go to the police. Plus, this was probably good for my mental health, right? He was very happy about this and we exchanged numbers. I introduced Jeff to my friend group that weekend, and they loved him. We told our fake story again, and we laughed about all these inside jokes. It was actually really nice. Like, I knew the entire thing was fake, but part of me was all wrapped up in it still. We continued meeting like this a few times with my friends and father. The weird thing is, the nightmares even stopped for a bit. I had somehow convinced myself it was all real. One day, after he dropped me off, I realized I was comfortable being around him. This was a breakthrough for me. I went from punching random guys on the dance floor to calmly sitting in the car with my ex-kidnapper. He turned to say goodbye, and without thinking, I just blurted those 3 words out. He turned to say goodbye, and without thinking, I just blurted those 3 words out. "I love you." He stared at me for a moment, and I went on. "I can't continue like we are now. I need you to know that. I'll still send money for your mom's treatment. I'll send anything. I just needed to say this fake arrangement is too much for me." Before I could say anything else, he leaned in and kissed me. He also agreed that we had an undeniable connection from the moment he saw me in the store. Just like that, we were dating. And I wish I had been smarter and had seen him for what he really is. Soon after we became official, my dad asked to meet with him. We were a little nervous that he secretly hated him, but the news shocked us both. He offered Jeff a position in his company. It wasn't a very big job, but it let him get in touch with a lot of clientele. Plus, it paid better than anything he ever had. We never spoke a single word of the kidnapping or anything to my father, and I planned on keeping it that way. He worked very hard at the starting position, and life was good. We moved in together, and he got to experience a little of the luxurious life I was living, and he continued to take care of his mother. I used to visit his mother occasionally, but one day, things changed. He was really weird when he came home, and I asked what had happened. He told me her condition had gotten much worse. He didn't think it was a good idea for me to visit with her anymore. He said she was a very proud woman and wouldn't have wanted anyone to see her this way. I never questioned it and let him keep that private part of his life. Despite his mother's condition, he seemed happier. He loved his life and he was very ambitious. He told me one day that he had dreams of having his own company and to be rich. He was making decent money, but he said it all had to go to his mother's treatment. So I continued to pay for everything for us. The apartment, groceries, going out. I loved being with such a selfless person, or so I thought. One day, he got this huge promotion. With this promotion came a lot of money. I thought he would be able to help out. Right at that time, though, his mother needed another major surgery. I asked if I could visit her, but he said that she still wasn't comfortable with me seeing her like that. He made me promise never to go to her. He ended up spending even more time away from me. He was pretty much either at his mother's shack or at work. Even when he came home, it would be at very late hours. At first, I thought this was because of him having no time, but it became very apparent one day that he was trying not to hang out with me. We had a huge fight over it one day. I walked right up to him and asked if he was cheating. He insisted he was just working and taking care of his mom. He asked me how I could be so selfish that I needed to be the center of everything. He had a much harder life than me, and I didn't understand. I felt really bad about it, and I told him I would make it up with a romantic evening. On me, of course. I insisted on making us a reservation at this fancy restaurant since he was showing no initiative in making dates. It was our anniversary, and I wanted it to be special. I waited a whole hour for him there. It was so embarrassing. I called him over and over again, but he didn't answer at all. That's it. I was so fed up, I decided to break my promise and go to the shack. How dare he not show up like that? When I got there, I saw his car in the driveway. I couldn't see what was going on because of the lights, but you could tell he wasn't alone. So the next day, I decided to come to the shack and hide inside before he comes. I know where he hides the extra key. I let myself in, expecting to see the same poor home I remembered. But my mouth dropped when I looked inside. The shack was absolutely gorgeous on the inside. Plasma screen TVs, crystal statues, everything. The house had gotten a major upgrade, and it was very apparent that his money wasn't all going into medical expenses. Where was Jeff? I looked around the home for any sign of him at all. I found no one. That's right, not a single soul. It's not like his sickly mother could have just waltzed out of here. Unless he had some kind of secret necromancer, he had a lot of explaining to do. I thought that maybe he had a secret family he was with and that he was only using me for my money and father's position. I decided to wait out for his return. I shut off the lights and waited angrily in the darkness while watching funny My Story animated videos and scrolling through memes. I didn't have to wait long. As soon as I heard a car pull into the driveway, I hid behind a couch to catch him by surprise, along with whoever else he was bringing. Well, I was right, partly. He did show up with a girl, but there was no way this was his wife. The girl was maybe about 14, and she was blindfolded and very scared. He told her to wait patiently, and as soon as her father wired him the money, he would drop her off safe and sound. It seemed like he was doing much more with his connections than business. I was angry. I quickly texted my friend to call the police and sent her my location. Next, I put my phone on recording mode. I jumped from behind the couch, screaming, startling them both. I confronted him immediately, saying that he needed to explain himself. Well, he spilled the beans pretty fast. Turns out, his mom did take a turn for the worst, but he wasn't supporting her. She died. He had lied about her health so he could continue to live off of me and hoard his wealth. He told me he never loved me. He just saw me as a ticket to wealth. He planned on getting so rich that he could leave me high and dry and never worry about his bank account again. He had been using his connections to get contacts from very rich parents so that he could continue collecting ransoms. I told him his days of being rich were over, but he said not to be so sure. He threatened to kill me. "Nobody is ever going to find out about this little conversation, Mandy," he said, and he jumped at me. And I started running and I hid in his mother's room and closed the door with a key. So he started banging on the door really hard, trying to break it. But 30 seconds later, the lights started flashing. It was the police. He tried to make a run for it, but the police tackled him down very hard. He started crying hysterically when I told him there was no Gucci in prison. Today, I sleep very calmly and without nightmares, knowing that I caught my kidnapper.
This story is something that I like to share with my friends when they're feeling down about their love life. A couple of years ago, our school was getting renovated to add a new auditorium in. Half the school was closed off, but there was one bathroom that I found located down a dark hallway that was the prime place to do a number 2. You know what I mean. It was always quiet in there and no one ever came down that way because it was so dark. This one morning, I'd been running late for school, so I didn't get a chance to go to the bathroom at home like I usually do. I got to my first hour class and felt the rumble in my stomach. I had to go. So I asked for the hall pass and traveled down that dark, lonely hallway to get to my throne. But when I got there, I discovered that they had blocked the girls' bathroom. There was a yellow caution tape across the door. It seemed that they were now working on it and it was under construction. I was nowhere near another girl's bathroom and I really had to go. So my only option at this point was to head to the boys' room. I almost didn't get my pants down in time when I finally got to the stall and started my business. Thankfully, I finished quickly. You know, it goes much faster when you don't have your phone to entertain you. I was just getting my pants zipped back up when I heard 2 boys walking in the bathroom. Crap, I thought to myself. I didn't want to get caught in the bathroom, and I didn't want to leave because I didn't want them to know it was me who had just dropped a bomb in here. All I could do was wait, and hopefully they do their business and be on their way. Of course, I wasn't so lucky. I've never known boys to be gossipy, but apparently that's what these kids wanted to do today. After they both got done washing their hands, they stood at the sinks. I could see them through the crack in the door, but luckily they couldn't see me. My feet were up on the toilet, and I was trying very, very hard not to move or shake. It got even more difficult to do when I heard the first boy say, "So, do you really think Lily's hot?" My eyes grew wide and my jaw dropped. That was my name. Who the heck would think that I'm hot? I tried to get closer to the crack in the door without making any noise. "Oh, dude, yeah, definitely," said the other boy. As I peeked through the crack in the door, I could just make out the boy's light brown hair and his letterman's jacket. Other than that, I didn't have a clue who he was. "Are you going to ask her out?" the first boy asked. "No way. She doesn't seem to be into me. She's always looking away when I look at her, or she won't talk if I say hi. She's probably just shy. Ask her out." "Nah, I can't. I'm really sure she doesn't think I'm hot." Was this person talking to Tyler? The hottest guy in the school? I thought to myself, watching the boys as they finally left the bathroom. Tyler was a football player, so he definitely had a letterman's jacket, and he had soft brown curls that fell a little over his eyes. I hope it was Tyler. He does look at me sometimes, but I always get embarrassed because I feel like his piercing blue eyes are stabbing my soul. Am I being too dramatic? Probably. Anyway, I finished washing my own hands, and then I waited a couple more minutes to leave the bathroom. When I returned to my class, my teacher gave me a dirty look. I went up to her and told her that my period started, and she gave me a nod of understanding. I apologized and headed to my seat. We were supposed to be working on algebra, but I couldn't get my mind off of Tyler. What if he really had said he liked me? I'm not the most popular girl in school. I'm not super hot like the spunky cheerleaders. I'm more of an athletic type. I always figured Tyler went for girls who were super small, had bleached blonde hair. Maybe I underestimated him. When class was over, I still wasn't 100% sure it was Tyler who had been talking about me in the bathroom. So I didn't want to go up to him and just exclaim, "Kiss me," in front of everyone. Instead, I made my way over to where he was and kind of stood by to see if he would peek at me. My friend Daria came over. We talked, and I told her I had a secret. I explained what happened, and she couldn't believe what I said. "You're telling me that you were taking a poop and found out someone majorly hot has a crush on you?" I was actually done pooping, but yes, I was stuck in the bathroom, and now I may have a super hot boyfriend. "I don't believe this," she said, as she shook her head. Wow, thanks for the vote of confidence, bestie, I thought to myself. Not that I don't think Tyler would like you, it's just that he's dating Simone. She pointed over her shoulder at Tyler, who had his arm around, you guessed it, Simone, a blonde cheerleader. Sigh. I watched as the two kissed and blushed. Dang it. Either I was wrong and that's not the Tyler that has a crush on me, or he's totally into me while having a girlfriend. I don't know which was worse. I tried to get all of this off my mind, but then lunch happened. I usually brought my own lunch, but today I was running late, remember, and I had to get a hot lunch. Standing in the lunch line, I was studying my phone. I wasn't looking at anything cool. Everyone I would have talked to was in school too. When I heard the voices from earlier, it was the boys from the bathroom. They were right behind me in line. I was about to turn around and see who Destiny had waiting for me. Now that I had a better vantage point, I could hear that it wasn't Tyler. I turned around to see Matt standing right behind me next to Drake. Matt is someone who was always on the outside of my friend group, but I never paid much attention to him because he was pretty shy and kept to himself. He was a wrestler, and he had some gorgeous blue eyes. As I looked closer at him in the lunch line, I realized that he looked a lot like Shawn Mendes. There's no way I wanted them to know what I was doing in there in the first place. Gross. So I put on my best flirty smile and gave Matt the eye. I turned back around and finished lunch as usual. I've known him for many years, but he's not someone I would have considered going out with. Even though he is cute, he's shorter than a lot of the guys I'm attracted to, and that's okay. Anyway, later on that day, when I was walking to my last class, Matt and Drake walked by in the hallway, and Drake nudged Matt. Hey, Lily, I heard from behind me. I turned around, and he was standing there. Drake was a few feet away, pretending that he was trying to get into his locker, even though I knew his locker was way on the other side of the school. Hey, what's up, Matt? I asked, playing it cool. He coughed and came closer. So, I was wondering if you were doing anything this weekend? It was definitely Matt that was in the bathroom, I thought to myself. No, not at all. Why? What do you have up your sleeve? He got a huge smile on his face and asked me if he could take me to the movies. Of course, I said yes. The rest of the week went by super slow. All I wanted was to get to Saturday so I could see Matt. Throughout the school week, we kept flirting with each other in the hallways and talking in class, but we didn't have time to see each other outside of school. Finally, it was Saturday, the big day. I spent all day getting ready, putting on face masks, shaving my legs, putting lotions and creams all over my body. Then I slipped into one of my favorite floral dresses and a denim jacket. My phone jingled and I beamed when I read that Matt was outside my house. When I got in the car, his face was all smiles too. "Hey, you look beautiful," he said. I couldn't help but blush. "Thank you. You look handsome and you smell really good." Is that weird? So I was thinking, there's supposed to be a meteor shower tonight. How would you feel about going to the park instead of the movies? Are you going to try and murder me? Or are you just cheap? I giggled. Matt smiled and nudged my shoulder. "For real, I think this would be really cool." "Okay, let's do it." We pulled up to the park and Matt got out of his car. He went to the back where he pulled a blanket, a basket, and some pillows out of his trunk. We made our way over to a patch of grass and he spread the blanket out. He pulled out a bottle of sparkling juice and 2 glasses from the basket. The cork was popped and we drank the bubbly along with some strawberries that he'd carefully cut up and put in a Tupperware container. It was the cutest thing I'd ever seen. For the next 2 hours, he mesmerized me with all of his wisdom about the sky and what's beyond our view. I don't know what came over me, but as he was telling me about the Big Dipper, I leaned over and kissed him. It didn't take him long to grab the back of my head and lean into the kiss, and we laid back against the pillows again. As the meteor shower flew overhead, we stared into each other's eyes. I'll never forget the way he made me feel that night. And I'm honestly so happy that I got trapped in the boys' bathroom. This was the most romantic first date I've ever been on. Things didn't end all that great for Matt and I, though. On our second date, I mentioned how I was in the bathroom, and I heard him talking to Drake about me. He gave me the weirdest look and finally said, "But Lily, I didn't tell Drake that I liked you. I didn't tell anyone that I liked you." I was confused. "But I saw you in the bathroom the other day with Drake, and he asked you if you thought I was hot." The more I talked, the weirder it sounded. "No, Lily, that wasn't me. Did you think I was the person in the bathroom and that's the only reason you went out with me?" The hurt on his face was serious, and I felt my heart hit my feet. Ugh. I think I did just go out with him because I thought he liked me. The date ended soon after that. He dropped me off at home, and I tried to text him several times. I think he finally blocked me. All of this was really upsetting, but I tried not to get too down about it because next weekend was prom. I was really excited to go, even though I wasn't going to have a date now. When prom day finally arrived, I dressed in a long, black, sparkly dress and the highest heels I could stand to walk in. My friends and I pulled up to the hotel where the prom was being held, and it was like a massive party erupted around the grounds. All of the seniors and juniors were dancing, relaxing, and drinking punch. I caught the eye of Tyler once or twice, who kept smiling shyly at me. Weird, I thought. He's not dancing with his girlfriend. Maybe they broke up? By the end of the night, everyone was having a great time, and the announcer came to the stage to tell everyone who was going to be the next prom king and prom queen. I knew that Tyler and his girlfriend were a shoo-in, so I waited in the back with my friends for the announcement. Then, just like in those cheesy teen movies, the announcer, who was our assistant principal, called Tyler to the stage to be crowned as the king. Soon after, my name was shouted as well. "Lily, come on up! You have been voted prom queen!" I could not believe my ears. I rushed up to the stage and the tiara was placed on my head. My smile was probably as bright as the moon. I was elated. Tyler came over and gave me a hug, and I swear I heard him whisper, "I really like you." I couldn't move or speak. Had it been Tyler in the bathroom the whole time? We walked off the stage and we were congratulated by our friends. And then Tyler pulled me over to the corner and looked me in the eye. "Lily, I can't hold it in any longer. I really like you. Will you dance with me?" We danced the rest of the night, and we kissed when he took me home. It's been a couple of